can be. The issue here is that when we don't do that, we're suffering. It's a diagnosis. I don't know if you accept this, but I created that this morning. We've got a diagnosis. What's a diagnosis? It's a discovering of a disease that is abnormal. It's an abnormal consciousness or entity that prevents us from being at our full potential. This is a disease, and I coined the idea of what disease it would be when I was creating this talk this morning. What is the disease? Anybody think about it? It's an abnormal condition. It's an abnormal condition that prevents us from participating fully in the world of form. Any ideas?
Here.
The disease is spiritual unawareness. Isn't that interesting? Spiritual unawareness. This particular month is all about spiritual unawareness. How do we transcend this idea, this disease? How do we go from the disease to the healing? That's what this month's all about. How do we go from having this abnormality, not really understanding or even bringing in this idea of experiencing this dynamic presence that we call God? How do we transcend that? How do we bring it into our life? How do we communicate with it? Our dear friend Gandhi made the statement, and he was very right. He said, you know, there are many diseases in the world, but there's only one physician, and that physician is God. It's that living presence. That's the only physician in the world. So how do we transcend this? How do we bring this? How do we participate and listen to and experience the living presence? There's a story that will explain it to us. I call it the Jeanette Freeman story because I borrowed it from her. My dear friend Jeanette from the Oneness Center in Fresno. And it's a story about, and it gives us an idea of what we need to do. It's a story about this magnificent monastery on the top of a cliff in the Himalayas. And thank you. You led into this. I love it. Getting there was not too bad. It's okay because it was a steep walk, but the last 100 yards was the difficult part. And why? Because you had to get into a basket, and the basket then had this pulley, this fancy pulley, and there was always a monk guiding the people. And once you get into the basket, then the monks at the top of this monastery, and they specialize in spiritual healing, by the way, and they specialize in the presence. They would pull the basket up this pulley, through this pulley to the platform that's up on the cliff. And so this there are several people on the thing, and one of the people looked up and he said, my gosh, he said, he noticed that the rope was unraveling, was threading. And he was shocked, and he was in fright. And he looked at the monk, and he asked the monk, he says, when do you change the rope? And he looked up and he said, only when it breaks. What does that have to do with us accepting the fact that we're this creative energy? A lot. What happens is when we're trying to get up to that higher level of consciousness, we want to embrace that which we are, this wonderful spiritual entity that we are. We start unraveling our connection to the mountain. And how do we unravel it? We stop the flow of this divine energy through our fear and our doubt. We literally unravel the connection that we have to Spirit through fear and doubt. Because let's face it, this energy source, this Trinity, this living presence, always operates in our life. It always responds to everything we do, our emotions. And so it's a good thing, but sometimes it's not so great. If I put fear into the mix, what happens is this loving energy says, oh, Angelo needs to have more experiences with fear. And so I continue to have fearful examples. If I bring irritation, or if I bring limitation, oh, Angelo needs to have more examples of limitation in his life. So this loving energy is always there saying, yes, 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 to Angelo. And so that's the unraveling that I'm saying. And the only way that we can transcend that is, as Tim was saying today, it's very simple. And it is simple. We need to change our thinking. We need to embrace the fact that we are more than a body. We need to embrace the fact that we have this divine energy of love that always says yes. That this divine energy that comes from a dimension of all possibilities. So I don't need to get stuck when I'm up against something in this human drama, because I can rely on them. A few weeks ago we talked about and had a metaphor that this is like being on a teeter-totter. How many of you heard when we talked about the teeter-totter? Some of you may not remember. Usually we forget after 30 minutes after the talk. A lot of times people will say, Angelo, what did you talk about? I said, I don't know. But we explained that it's like being on a teeter-totter. You know, we're here, and on this teeter-totter we're imbalanced, and we're sitting on our rear ends, on our butts, at our wits' ends, looking up, and so we're just half there. We didn't bring into the mix our divine energy, that power that we are. We're winging it alone. And until we bring that divine energy in, so that we can be 100% of where we are, we won't be in balance. And when we get in balance, what happens is that the teeter-totter, that we're in balance, and then we're experiencing a wonderful life. And I had fun with this morning. You know what happens on that is, then we can give a message to the universe that there are no butt prints in the sands of time. And say it with me loud and clear, and so it is.